Exactly.
After we have a new card though.
I heard you say you're phasing the other one out. I haven't seen you.
Our hearts and our minds, just when our consciousness is at a higher level, somehow it makes different sense, right? Somehow spiritual wisdom, I'm sure in all of your lives you've had an experience where you heard something long back and now it makes sense, or something happened long back, today it makes sense why that happened. So thank you to Pranakriya and
Nityananda Chandra.
Nityananda Chandra, what a wonderful name. Thank you. All right, welcome.
Oh, the whiteboard.
It's not too much of an inconvenience. So I just like to stand and walk because I'm a little restless and hyper. To Soul Talks and honor and thank you for inviting me. This is a very special space. So this room we are sitting in, which was built 100 years ago and was at one point used as a godown and then used as a dump, then used as something, and then slowly as we transform into this, sorry, I'm a little soft, transformed into this wonderful space in which today it takes place soul talks and cooking classes and yoga and meditation. And when you come into the room, it's a different avatar each time. So this is a soul talk avatar. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in a place called Pune in India. Some of you know about this place. And I was born in a Vaishnava tradition, deeply rooted Vaishnava family. And because I was born in a Vaishnava family, I did not have anything to do with Vaishnava. I told my parents, I want to experience life. I don't want your rules and dogmas and keep it to yourself. Me, I'm a free man. So that's what I tried to do, tried my best, and I think I really did it well. So good that I was like, I'm done with this. I need some spiritual life. Not Vaishnavism. That was like, that's my thing. That's then through a route of traveling across India and meeting all these gurus and sadhus and accomplished people. Finally, I guess I just came home back to Bhakti and then fully embraced it from the heart. And then I was already interested in people, and in my MBA I was working in HR, and it also very much drove me to understand that somehow I wasn't happy, and I mean people aren't so happy, and so I wanted to share more of the spiritual wisdom. And then I was traveling with some monks, and then I said, I should be a monk. So for 8 years, I was a monk in India, and then I came here 6 years ago as a monk at the Bhakti Center. And then for 2 years I served here, and then recently got married, and now I live here with my daughter and wife, and this is the best part of my life is to be able to share spiritual wisdom, and hopefully maybe it makes sense to someone. And so that's a little bit about me. And the topic we're going to discuss today, before the topic, the room is a little quiet, I'm getting a little anxious. Maybe you should tell me your names and let me see a good question. Maybe, what do you think of the word karma? If you want a one-word answer or a one-paragraph answer, you can choose. Okay, let's begin from Jignasa. Yes.
So I'm Jignasha. what do I think of karma? I don't know, that's why I'm
The first-
here, but from
Yeah.
what we have, like, from what we know, from what we've learned,
Or let me change it a little bit. If I say the word karma suddenly, what's the first thing which comes to you?
consequences for your action.
Consequences. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tuan.
Tom.
That's what the how I think. Do good thing will come back to you.
Good thing will come back.
Aditi.
Aditi.
Yeah. Basically, if you do something good, then, it will possibly come back. And same if you do something bad.
Then it'll come back.
I'm Rosie, and I think of, a little bit, I don't know, energy that comes in and out based on what you put out.
My name is Pulkit, and the word that Pulkit, and the word that comes to my head is balance.
Balance.
Hi, my name is Arun, and what I presume as a thing also, karma starts with your thoughts. So you build up thoughts, sometimes thought itself can generate your karmas, and a very deep sense about the karmas, and of course, the Bhagavad Gita explains everything. And so karma is one thing one has to really look into what you are doing in life, and what you want to do or what you want to do
What you want to
through
do
your karma.
through karma.
She's
So,
yeah, that's okay.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, thank you. Her name is
Neera.
Meera.
I'm Campo.
Campo.
Not really familiar with the technology, but I assume that the karma might be some kind of reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Okay, thank you.
Hey, my name is Ravi. Karma, I think so. If what goes around comes around.
Goes around.
I think I don't have a lot of good karma.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I thought so today morning. I wore a nice pant for my talks, and my little daughter was playing something. And I was getting ready, and she came close. I said no, just run. And I turned around, and I was eating something, and I hadn't realized that the whole thing had dripped. Like instant karma. Yes.
I'm Susanna, and when I think of karma, I think of something I'll never be able to actually understand.
Okay.
My name is Shoshi. When I think about karma, I think action and reaction.
Action and reaction.
I'm Andre. When I think about karma, I think about like energetic baggage that you gotta work through. If you don't work through it, it stays with you.
Hello, Ari.
Here you go.
Yeah, and what popped into my head for karma is an image of a boomerang.
Oh.
Yes.
And Anirudh, you said was the first thing that comes to
Yes.
mind, right? I was like, oh, this is complicated.
Yes. All right. Rajani, what do you think of karma?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind, because I'm often talking to people about it, is what goes around comes around, sooner or later. Sometimes sooner, sometimes later.
Nityanand, what do you?
When you ask that question, what was the first thing I think of? Like this comic, it was like a vending machine, and it was you put in a quarter to get rid of your karma, and there's like a mallet that comes. Get rid of your bad karma, put it like this.
So interesting. Such a common thread. Kind of more or less, we kind of said the same thing. And I always feel this about the deep spiritual truths of the world are actually very simple. They aren't too complicated. They're quite observable. Doesn't take much of a gigantic experiment to really know that. And if you're just deeply tuned, if you just observe life, most spiritual truths are crystal clear. Right? That's what Prabhupada used to always talk about the Bhakti philosophy. He said, even a child can understand it and explain it. And that's one thing which hit me about Bhakti philosophy was I studied so many different types of philosophies, but they seemed, but one of the reasons I didn't like Bhakti was I thought it's too simple. It's too easy. I mean, that's it. Like I understood, no. It has to be something which it takes me years to understand. And I did do that and got me nowhere. And then this made it so easy, simple. So the Bhagavad Gita, which is a very famous book, and the exposition when Krishna or the divine personality speaks to Arjuna on a battlefield. And really it's a conversation between God and me. Read the Gita, if you could just go straight through the Gita. I've studied the Gita a lot. I used to never go straight through just the translations. And once one of my mentors told me, have you read the Gita? Just sit one place and read the whole thing. I said, no, I did it 4 hours. And for the first time I felt this is God speaking to me. It's so personal. It's like, it's practically what I would ask next. And that's what he would answer. And then what next would come. And then suddenly I would jump to this topic. And it seemed like such a beautiful conversation. And in that conversation, there are 5 major topics covered. It starts with me. Who am I? What's my reality? Because reality keeps shifting. Right now we belong to this particular reality. I am a father and a husband and a citizen and I stay in this place. But 5 years ago, that wasn't reality. It was completely different. When I was a monk, I didn't even think ever I'll get married and have a daughter. And before I was a monk, I never imagined I would be a monk. And before that means, so what is, that's real. This experience is real, but it's constantly changing. But there's someone, me, who has remained the same. And so Gita starts with the basic building block of spiritual thought, spirit. It starts with spirit. That I am not this changing thing. I am spiritual reality. And myself, the soul, that's an eternal reality. And so that's the first topic. And so the Gita says, and where did the soul come? Now, what's the soul? Talks a little about that, and that's divinity, second topic. But then the soul said, and then other topics go to, okay, but then what is the soul doing here in this realm which we experience, Prakriti, or this reality what we're experiencing? And then what animates that reality? Time. And then ultimately, as we all answered, how does it actually function is karma, the 5th topic of the Gita. And that of course is a topic spoken about elaborately. Every tradition, every spiritual, religious, everything has to deal with karma. The science of what you do comes back, or in simple words, but let's see what the Gita speaks about. And I've drawn my study from the Gita talks about karma in the basic concepts, and then there are detailed description in different literatures which give extreme details, sometimes scary, sometimes not. But let me start with setting the premise of our discussion. The basic premise is this life is just one experience, and we've had many lives in different ways, in different forms, and we will have many more. Today, in the morning when we went to our cupboards, this is the dress we picked out for a purpose. Pulkit wanted to come to Soul Talks. Maybe he wanted to be relaxed. He wanted to. So what he wore. And Rosie decided, well, it's a little cold also. This is what she wore. But 1 month later, it's going to be hot. And maybe he's going to wear something else and she'll wear something else. But she and him remain the same. Only their covering has changed. And therefore, their interaction with the outside of that covering may change a little bit accordingly. In a very similar way, this is the example the Gita gives. Just like we put on clothes, take them off, and take on new garments and give them up. In the same way, the soul is traveling through different lives. And this is the present life which I have worn on me. And that's where we're going to begin with the karma. What this also is a result of karma. But just again, setting the premise that karma won't make sense if we don't go beyond this life. It works within this life definitely. The basic idea is that there has to be many lives. That's one big question in theology if you study is the question of the existence of evil. It's a very big question if you do theological study, and it's difficult to answer without the concept of karma. The philosophy of evil states, why is it in simple terms, why is it that Anirudh is born with as a wonderful person? Why should this child born in Africa be born in utter poverty? What's why? And this is the concept of the philosophy of evil. So the philosophy of evil, if you don't answer it with karma, then it would either tend to the universe being evil, or the controller being evil, or everything is chance, or it won't give you a satisfactory answer. But if you say, wait a minute, Anirudh and this little guy from Africa, they're actually the same. They're the same eternal spirit soul. They're both spiritually completely aware, eternal, full of bliss. Satchit Ananda. But the clothes they are wearing, because of a little bit coming back to that analogy, when Pulkit went to the store to buy these particular set of clothes, maybe no offense, okay, I'm just using your name, but it's varies on mine. So perhaps he went to a section which says $50 shirts. There's one section that says $20 shirts, and there's another section that says $100 shirts. Perhaps $20, no, I don't want that. 100, oh, I wish, but I can't. Okay, fine, I'll do a $50. So his desire was to buy a shirt. He wanted a particular one, but in his pocket he had a limitation which didn't allow him to buy this one. In a very similar way, in this life, there was certain desires which helped this soul get this manifestation, and there were certain things which happened to the soul which made him get this manifestation. Silence makes me little. So we're going to elaborate this concept a little more. And when I speak, sometimes my thoughts may jump concept. So please ask the question, which will be helpful for all of us to smoothen that discussion. So let me start with what is the purpose of karma? What do you think is the purpose? Yes.
Well, I think karma is
your name.
Oh, my name's Leon.
Leon.
Yes, and so I think karma has to do with lessons. Right? So the whole purpose is to just teach us things, to teach us like if we take some sort of action, it kind of gives us feedback about what's the result of it, so that we can learn better.
Oh, thank you. So to teach us lessons.
I think it's accountability.
Accountability.
I think just to keep a balance in the consciousness,
Keeping a
balance in the consciousness is very important.
Thank you.
So that is where the karma gets it.
I was gonna say that.
Oh, it's
Which
I
was
was
what
gonna
you-
say that.
balance also. Okay.
You're welcome.
But I have questions on that too.
Okay, we will come to that.
So,
So yes, let's say there are three purposes to karma. First purpose of karma is, again, keep in mind, we are souls traveling through many lives. And let's start with one analogy that this world is like a school. Suppose you were the headmaster of the school, and the new little kids come in. It's a preschool. And this room is suddenly full of 20 fighting, yelling, running, shouting, excited kids. What's the first thing? You're a school. What's the first thing you would do? What's the first thing you would do? This is a situation.
Tell everybody to quiet.
Yes, you tell everyone. Quiet down. Quiet down. Come on. Let's make sense. If you don't quiet down, we can't get to what we really want to do. So quiet down. And suppose everyone is sitting quiet. There's one kid who's throwing something. What do you mean? There's one kid who's like,
Call them out.
okay, so you use a little.
I feel like
So-
I'm messing up here.
No. Sorry.
I'm kidding.
Not picking on it. But yes, and so what you would do is now you would try to create a way in which, okay, this kid is going to throw something, he's going to yell, so you'll suddenly say, if anyone makes noise, you will have to eat broccoli for lunch. There are 3 schools. So you came from a place of compassion. Your objective is, yet you're creating a kind of disciplining measure maybe, or so that's what you're going to do first. And so the first purpose of karma is balance or harmony. And all of you are together here in this world. How do we create a system where you don't kill each other, or you don't just go grab everything, just like kids? And it's not too untrue. Isn't that what we see today? The wars which are happening, or the everything. Why is it happening? Because greedy kids running around, or fighting, or angry, and these kids have kind of forgotten that there is a system which is making you right. So the first basic purpose is harmony. But suppose you have achieved harmony. Was that the purpose of the school? Is harmony just that the kids stay quiet and just what's the purpose of the school?
To learn.
To learn. So now the basic purpose was harmony piece, but now you come to the more advanced purpose, which is then you create a system where then you'll announce as the headmaster, now that we are quiet. So today we're going to learn ABCD, and whoever learns ABCD will get an ice cream for lunch. And now you create. Now the purpose is being met, and now they're going to learn. They needed a little impetus, so you create it, and that becomes the second purpose. And these are the 2 basic purposes. Again, so karma comes from a place of compassion, of love. It doesn't come from a place of revengefulness or someone waiting to catch us on. The headmaster is not in the school. Which kid does something wrong and God, catch it. The purpose is to really help the children to learn, to be happy, to grow. So that's where it's coming from. But sometimes to just make it harmonious, one of them may have to be called out. One of them may have to be disciplined. Once that's done, now let's learn. So we create a system of impetus. And then I'll say, and if you can't learn ABCD, then again, I'm coming from, I don't just want them to be lazy. I want them to learn quick. In 1 year, they have to do ABCD, they move on to math or whatever. So I create so these are the 2 basic purposes. Do you think there's any other purpose? Trick question.
Well,
What do you think of these 2 purposes? First question. Do you think that's why?
What do you do after you learn?
Okay, yes, and that's now I'll switch the beyond.
Yeah, that's right. This third purpose is liberation.
Oh,
United from.
no. So the other purpose, capable enough of. Okay. So you have advanced spiritual students. Okay. So yes,
To see things larger than oneself.
to see things larger than oneself. Yes. Now I'll switch the example a little bit and ask you a question. Suppose you're in a prison, and all these prisoners have a 40-year sentence, and you can see that all of them are good prisoners. They've done 20 years, and one day you're walking in your warden, and you feel that these guys, they made a little mistake. They're done. They don't deserve to be here anymore. Then you wonder, but should I just tell them to, just you can go out. They're excused. But then how will I ensure? And then you even start wondering that maybe they become comfortable here. Because if you know how a prison system works, it's a complete world in that. Right? They have their food, they have their, it's not always torture. It's, they have jobs inside, they have their school system, library, and do this, that. It's a nice, because the government wants to take care of the prisoners also, they deserve. And you just want to make sure that, okay, you are in a prison, but this is not, there's life out there. You can do so much more. And so, the third purpose of karma is ultimately to tell us that there's something even more beyond this material existence. You do good, you get good, great. You know you should avoid bad, so you don't get bad in your life, great. Now you understood you know how it works. Now you can figure it out. And the Vedic texts are full of elaborate, detailed rules and procedures and rituals of, oh, you want a healthy life, this is what you should do. You want a beautiful life, this is what you should do. You want to go to heavens and enjoy a long life, or this is what you should do. Oh, you're having this kind of trouble, so do this and this ritual and this, and you get over this. But then the ultimate purpose is not being met. That don't just remain here, getting your. Is the example here? Doesn't seem. Okay, maybe as we go along. Yeah. Okay. So this is the purpose of karma. So what is the purpose? Harmony, balance, that just peace, right? Just don't kill each other. Just, and then the second, to learn, to grow. That is a very big topic. I'm not touching, but that this to understand that it is meant to learn. That's the right word. It's not karma is not punishment. In school, was the objective is never punishment. The objective is something else. And to get the child there, maybe I have to use punishment. So when we think of karma, it is not someone up there sitting who is like, punish this guy, deserve, damned to do this and that kind of thing. So it's coming from there, and then what's the ultimate purpose?
It feels like punishment.
It does feel like punishment. But interestingly, I've been a very naughty student. And I know that my teacher was punishing me, not for the sake of punishment, but I didn't know how to take it well. That's when I felt it's punishment. So if I knew, then no, wait a minute, this discipline is meant for something else that I have to grow. Okay, so what do I learn from this? What did I do wrong? So many a times in our life when we go through, I was reading an interesting article where he describes the word karma as learning experience rather than we're all going through so much as a world as a whole now, as community, as individual, as family, and all those are meant. There's something behind it. There's some learning which has to happen. There's something we have to understand from that.
There's a lesson.
There's a lesson in everything. But I'm missing one very key point. So what is the lesson going to drive us toward? What is karma driving us toward? Even in terms of harmony and growth, what are we trying to learn? To evolve. To evolve. Like evolve means what? To be better means what?
To be more loving, their true selves.
To be more loving, to be our true selves. Yes, the nature of the soul is to serve. And if you see, karma is very like nobody needs to teach you that, oh, if you do this, it's a bad karma, it's a good karma. We all know it. We know when we've done something wrong or bad. Is it very confusing? Is it like, don't we all know it? And so the basic lesson of karma is to take us toward love, service, giving, helping. That's what it's meant to take us towards. And anything which takes us away from that is not going to be, I'm not saying it's a bad karma, but that's not where the lesson is at. And sometimes when we go too far away, then we start creating bad karma. It's okay that I want to earn a lot of money. But if I want to earn a lot of money at the cost of cheating people, and that nobody else should earn, so that I'm the best, then let's head it into bad karma. But if I want to earn a lot of money too, so I want to earn a lot of money and then I want to help these people, and I'm headed towards good karma in a very basic way. Yes.
I was just gonna ask a question, so are you saying that the purpose of the soul is to serve?
Yes, thank you. The purpose of the soul is to love and serve. That's the only reason we love and serve. Because again, in theology, that's called the paradox of existence. Why do we exist? If we only exist to enjoy, there can be two kinds of existence. Sorry, this is a little deviation from the purpose. We can either only live to enjoy, then that will create a mess, and no one can actually be happy. Even if you're the most hedonistic, materialistic person, you still know I need to cooperate if I want to enjoy. Like, I can't do it alone. So it's inbuilt in us. And then when you further go, then you know there's no satisfaction, there's no fulfillment, there's no contentment, those feelings can't come, there can be pleasure on different levels, but then yes, the purpose of the soul is to serve. And that's what karma wishes to take us to slowly to understand. Yes, I should give. And it's just a natural observation. At least that's what I've observed. And I've traveled a lot, at least in India, spoken even to just general people. As a person grows, you generally see in teenage, which is you're fresh in life, but insensitive. You don't care. Right? I'm just thinking about my grandmom. I couldn't care less if she existed or not when I was a teenager, how much she loved. I'm too full of myself. I don't know life. And now I know it. I understand. No, I can't do that anymore. I know that was wrong or whatever, but now I know it's about loving, it's about giving. Generally, as we age, right, with age comes this understanding that done with. That's also kind of a karmic lesson, a karmic learning. Yeah.
You mentioned we innately know what's good and what's bad, but my question to you is morality subjective or is it objective? Like, we don't all agree on what's good and bad, so how do we know?
True. Morality is a principal part of dharma, which is dealt, especially the book Mahabharata has a lot of, if you know, kind of the story between the struggle for the throne between these two cousin brothers. There was a lot of dilemma whether they should keep the throne or who should get the throne, and intuitively both were right. Okay, you're right in what you're saying. But there are simultaneous, I'll give you a simple example. Suppose you're a soldier who's meant to go on the war and you have a family. So your dharma, the right thing to do is to take care of the family. And suppose you're the only breadwinner and you have 2 kids. And if you go to the war and you die, who's going to take care of these kids? So what will you do?
What did I do? Well, I go to the war. That's because of my personal reasons. Yeah.
Okay, exactly. Why were you confused? Both are right. Right? But that's called that is conflicting karma. Or what I meant to say in very much essence. But both those choices may be that we are studying categorizations of karma, which is a detail, like the actual answer to would it be good or would it bad, we're not touching today. But intuitively, you kind of choosing both are two rights you're choosing. So if I ask you a little more black and white question, that would you rather go and join a war front or would you join a terrorist organization? What do you think you would do?
No, I honestly don't know.
Okay. That may be a little more clearer sometimes, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe but there's some sense of, oh, am I ultimately causing harm or good, or just that basic point which will help a person know. And that's what I mean by intuitively knowing. And also, we will come to one, sometimes there may not be clarity. And that's also a karmic covering in the mind, which sometimes where the intuitive clarity is not there in many things in our life. I was just going to touch this categorization of karma just to know how not just interesting, how connected everything is. Why in our life, I do life coaching and there's so much talk about what blocks me, what holds me back. But karmically, these are all karmic impediments. There's an impediment where you can't receive. And it's just your karma for that time. That even if there's an opportunity, even if someone is giving you love, someone is giving you a gift, you just can't receive it. Somehow it just doesn't come in. That's good. So we'll come to that. Okay. Any questions or
Are we gonna spend time on overtime, or lifetimes karma, or are we just gonna focus on one lifetime?
okay, now we'll come to the question. Let's come to this. So I'm just going to draw a simplistic diagram of karma and then we come to that. But just before that, let me make one last point about karma. Very, also a very important point. Suppose there is this room. Everyone went away and Susanna left $100 on that chair by mistake, and she left. And in the evening, there were other visitors, and a 13-year-old boy came into the room. And he was just flirting with all these $100, and he didn't notice the camera. He didn't notice the camera there. And then he just came and took those $100 and walked out. Okay. And again, next day she came, she forgot another $100. This time the janitor came, he was cleaning and he took the $100. Fine. Third day, again, the same thing happened. And the security guard of the building, he was coming to check, puts the lights off, he's looking up, nobody's here, and he sees the $100. And he takes that. Now you are the jury, and all three are presented to you, and you're supposed to punish them. What would you give an equal punishment?
Most likely, you're not gonna treat the
Why?
13-year,
Exactly the same.
because of what you were saying earlier, they're not sensible when you're teenagers.
You would consider it?
I don't know.
Intention.
What do you think? Should we give equal punishment?
I would say, right?
Mm,
See, right? It's
I don't know what I would do.
but there's some but in us, right? There's some like we want to be fair. Same time. 13 years brain, he's like he knows.
Yeah.
Janitor and the security guard. Okay, who would you punish the least?
Just because we've grown in life seeing that 13-year-old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's say the 13-year-old. Who would you punish the most? The guy.
The security guard, because he's there to secure, but I don't know what I would do. I mean, the crime is the same between him and the janitor too, if we take the 13-year-old, because that's a bit more complicated. I would treat the janitor and the security guard the same, but I know there's,
Andre, what about you? Same for the security guard and the janitor?
Kind of zoned out. What was the question?
Would you punish them the same? You would punish the 13-year-old?
No, what's this? What are they being punished for?
stealing the
$100. The same $100.
Is this so? Like, is the security guard responsible for safeguarding the $100?
I
Is
mean,
it
the
something that
building-
they signed on for and agreed to
Yes,
do?
they're supposed to secure the building, make sure nobody's stealing anything.
Well, then the security guard,
Okay.
because he also consented to that.
No, all are guilty,
All are same.
all are guilty same.
They're the same. All right.
I guess also maybe like consider, Amy,
Amy.
also maybe considering like how much both of them earn, like, let's just say like the custodian is not making a living wage or something like that, then I feel like that's something that might need to be factored into.
Anyway, yes, Karuna.
Okay. So what I would say is that I wouldn't really punish them or not punish them with the election. I would explain to them, listen, you did this, you did that, and I'll explain the consequences of doing it. But then at the same time, because I think that this brings me to the question at the same time that you were asking. If we take away the factors, the time and space, are we paying the karma or are we really going through the three purposes at the same time in the present?
Yes. all three. Okay, I'll come back. Otherwise, this topic won't end.
Okay, so let me tell you the
Yes.
last thing.
Yes.
The last thing is that if I see them, probably they are already paying. One is needy,
Okay.
one is
Mhm.
uh,
Okay.
the life is not really that great,
Okay.
and the kid probably is learning through experience.
Okay. Thank you. So my purpose of asking was not what we're paying for, but my purpose was to tell you the law of karma is not a mechanical law. If I drop this pen or this mobile, which will fall first? No?
The mobile's here.
I don't know, try it.
I was gonna say, don't try it.
No, it's going to fall the same, of course. Because the law of gravity is not personal. The law of gravity is a mechanical law. The law of gravity, like Amy was being sensitive. The law of gravity is not going to say no. He only has one phone. I forget. But the law of karma, which is very important to know, is a personal law. It's not a mechanical law. It's not being governed.
Hold on.
The explanation of karma talks about 13 witnesses who account for what we do and how it is administered. Again, that's a very different subject, so I'm not going. But it's good to know. It's not that everyone is judged on the same scale. It's not that the $100 bill is going to be. It is definitely going to be different. Maybe the same. Finally, ultimately, who knows? But it's a personal. That's the divine hand in that law. It's always a person. It's always going to be an individual. What's best for me? I'm not going to be put into a box or why did this? I got this fine. No. It's like maybe for the same thing. Sometimes a soul may get one punishment, sometimes, or some result, sometimes, or something else, or whatever. So I don't want to use that word punishment.
What did
It's a
you
harsh
say
word, yes.
that was called? You said it's karma is what? You said something. Like that where it's individual. What is that?
Personal.
Personal, just personal?
Or individually customized or catering to you as a person. So there's like a divine eye just for Jigyasa. Who's okay, this is what she's. It's not like it's not a blind. It's not.
Little example. It's sometimes somebody might ask the question, how why would you suffer something you can't remember what you've done? But it's like you say, it's non-punitive, it's transformative. So one of them is something you've probably all seen is like social experiments, or even you experience yourself, was where some of the social experiments you see is somebody is, say, pretends to be poor and they're on the street with in like one was a kid, he was 13 years old, and he was standing in 20-degree weather on Fifth Avenue begging for help, and people were walking past him. But who's the first person who came to help him? Any guess?
Person in a similar.
Yes, a homeless person immediately like took off his jacket. How are you, kid? He was like 13-year-old kid. It was this whole like, video was thing. And so if you, in your past life, if you couldn't learn the lesson because your mother told you, your father told you, your teacher told you not to be greedy, your religion, whatever, you couldn't learn the lesson, then next life you learn it through the school of hard knocks, where you just, instead of your last life, you might have been apathetic towards and be greedy, but then the situation made you empathetic. Just being born in that kind of poverty-stricken situation transformed your way you deal with life. So it wasn't punitive; it was transformative.
So are you saying that carries over into the next life? That if
Well,
you learn
that's-
that lesson,
Well, that's
To
what
be
karma
empathetic.
or life.
Yes, it does. So now we come to that chart. Then you get the. But this is what I wanted to. The last thing about the previous one is it's personal. It's not like.
So your question about the 3 people, what's the answer?
I don't know. Maybe she was right in being sensitive. Maybe he's right. Equal.
No,
Just
let
right.
me tell you why it is equal. I want to give you a reason for this. The thought behind the action is same,
The intent.
whether 13-year-olds or anybody. Thought is important in the karma is the thought. That's why I stress always on your thought, improving your thoughts. So long as the thought is same, immediately the karma action is taken place, basically.
True.
Even if physically you haven't done it.
True.
Like having a thought of killing somebody or really killing. Once the thought has come, that can think, your karma action has already started. So I give a lot of this thing that, okay, so long as the thought is the same, they will get the similar results in their coming lives because they have created a similar action. Not as a physical action, but actually as a thought which has created the energy which responds to these kind of things.
True.
So I personally think karma has a lot of effect
Yes,
on your
yes,
thoughts
yes.
and
That's-
energy you
that's
create
true.
around it.
Yes. And the personal part is that consideration. There's a thought, there may be a thought behind the thought. A thought behind the thought.
Yeah,
which
whatever,
made
but that
situation.
is giving an answer or whatever you can say, okay, yeah, I did it because, I needed the money most or whatever thought you, but that has not no excuse for those things. You have done a wrong action already.
True.
Correct?
Yes.
Whether, see, there's always an absolute right and absolute wrong. You can't change it. You can't change it.
Oh,
If that happens, then this balance cannot be maintained. There has to be an absolute right and absolute wrong to create a conscious balancedness. So conscious will spoil literally if you relax some rules to somebody and some rules to somewhere. Then this conscious, this word cannot exist, basically.
So absoluteness, one of the things which was very, very satisfying when I learned the Bhakti tradition, especially is that there is an absolute, and yet there is no absolute also. I'll tell you why. Because, and for example, growing in our spiritual life, this is completely off the topic, but just on that very important word, because the word absolute can make spiritual life very scary. And it can make spiritual progress very impersonal. And that's one of the things which I observe very clearly spoil many spiritual traditions. And the teacher would come and say, okay, everyone, from today, if you want to make spiritual progress, you should all do this. It can't work like that. Because everyone comes from a very different place. Not just this life again. How do we know? We are all sitting here today in the same room. We've come from a different city. We've come from a different background. And from where? And so many of these spiritual traditions I observed when there was a dogma, like a very cookie cutter, prescriptive growth model. And so Bhakti and any spiritual philosophy is actually very personal. That you want to have a personal relationship with the universe, which is unique or the divine or Krishna. It's me and Krishna, which is just me, fully knows me, fully understands me, fully empathizes with my situation, understands what I'm going through, understands my this much step, maybe someone else's 100 steps. Is this my effort in doing this was as much as he did 100, and I may get the same result for this as he did 100 because I was where I was coming from.
I think personally, everybody keeps a personal wallet, like you have a personal bank account. You have a personal wallet for these karmas. So what the consciousness selects you depending on the wallet, because depending on the balance you own it.
Yes.
Literally.
Yeah.
So
That's a good
you
example.
call it as a personal, but it is a universal kind of institution where you have to maintain your balance. If your balance is low, you know what can happen. And if your balance is high, your happiness level goes high. So it again depends on the wallet basically which you're keeping in the pocket. That's what you initially said, that somebody selected $50 shirt or $100 shirt, depending on the balance in the pocket. So if you have a karma balance, you can select a higher things.
Yes.
If your karma balance is low, go to Africa. So this all resolves with your wallet you're keeping in.
True. So this chart is kind of explaining now how it flows through different lives. It's 12 to 7, 12, 15 years, right?
12:45.
12:45.
That includes question and answers and
Okay. So, I think maybe I'll draw the chart first, and then it will make sense. This is So from knowledge, awareness, cognizance, wisdom comes the seed in the heart, which can be called desire or tendency or proclivity, or it's a very deep subconscious. It's not like a manifest, sometimes perceivable, sometimes not a very perceivable thing. For example, I like asking the question to people, what brought you to spiritual life? And many times they say, I don't know, but just I just felt drawn to something. Or you ask someone, did you always want to be a businessman? No, but like I just had this thing with numbers and entrepreneurship and so from knowledge or ignorance, both, come these very deeply rooted seeds of desires or what I want to experience in my life. Right? As a soul, we are here in this world to experience through we all, what's your favorite place to eat food? No, okay, let's go no. So my questions are, I'm just trying to don't feel pressured by my questions. Or Archit, what's your favorite?
Bhakti sir.
And what's your favorite?
Favorite restaurant?
Yeah.
Devi's Kitchen.
Yes, okay. But why? Because she wants to experience Japanese food, and so that's her favorite. She wants to experience something else. And she wants to do something else. And so, but how did that come? Perhaps she heard about something. Perhaps she liked it the first time she ate, or he went somewhere. So from knowledge, from ignorance, comes this seed, which is now going to form something. And this is called, this word is coming here, but it's not what we use. The word karma or action. Now it manifests. It can manifest either subtly, that means in the mind. It can manifest through, use the Sanskrit term. So it can either.
It's hard to see that.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Maybe bigger, is it possible to make it bigger?
Very dirty handwriting, so I wanted to write small. So okay, mana, vacha, and kriya. That means either that desire is now going to be manifest in the mind as a thought, as an intention, as now it's more perceivable, visible, or as vacha, because words are also considered manifestation of kriya, and or kriya, or I go and do it. And from this is now going to come karma. That karma what sanchit or gigantic bank account, a gigantic account which holds all the results. Oh, you did this is what you're going to get. You did this again, being personal, being very intentional by the universe, by the divine, being okay, so this, okay, let's give this, and this, and that happens. Now this goes to two different things happen. From what is called as pra. I might as well write the Chinese which is the manifest result of karma in this life. And prarabdha is the reason we are right now seeing a variety in this. Why don't we all have the same face, the same height, same structure, same mental power, the same? No. This is the result of prarabdha. We go to the details of that, different types of prarabdha. And the result of that. But from sanchit comes one more thing. Is something called Buddha, which is an enhancement of that disposition, an enhancement of that tendency, and a further fuel to, like a very simple example. She wants to eat at no food. She has a desire, now it manifests. Suppose she goes and eats at home. she really has a good time. And perhaps, oh, I'm going to look up. For example, she ate at Nobu and she had a good experience, and maybe she was very kind to the staff, and she really appreciated all the books, and she created a very nice deposit of good results. Like, oh, she did this, and so after 20 years, she was stuck on a highway and she was wondering there was nobody to change her tire. At that time, it went into Sanchit. It's not there yet. After 20 years, someone came and helped her with the tire. Just a random guy who stopped on the road and she said, "Thank you. And it's okay, no. Should I pay you something?" "No, it's fine." And he drove off. Where does this come from? And that was Sanchit. With that, what happened was, because she did this, it created this result. After she came out of nowhere, just like, it was good to the staff, it was nice. And next day she walked into work and she stepped back, receptionist, "How are you doing? How are you?" And she walked. So it further made her impetus to that same action. And then that was back into vision, and that's how the cycle is. And so Sanchit belongs to many, many lives. Everything accounted for. But Sanchit can't come in one life. It will be too much. It'll be overwhelming to be able to live that whole thing out in one life. And therefore it's spread out into many lives. It's spread out. Is this nice? Okay. That was a great example. Okay, it's like really clear. Is this any questions?
What are those 3 words before speech?
Mana, Kriya, and Vacha. The way the bijas are very deep desire the soul has, which is not, it's not exactly perceivable. It is, if you're very deeply spiritually attuned, then your awareness level is going so high, so you know why I thought this was happening. But usually it's, I don't know, it's just there in these bijas. And another thing about the bija also is it may not fructify like a seed. Like you throw seeds on the ground. It's not that all will sprout. You just left them, and next summer you came in the spot because barren suddenly has this thing going. Now it's sprouting. So many bijas of different kinds of desires in the heart and mind.
So is the seed for just this lifetime, or is it?
Thank you. Now, many seeds from many lives, and some may come from. An example from the Mahabharata is when Dhritarashtra, the blind king who loses his 100 children in the war, he asks this question to the sage Narada. He says, "Why did I go through this? I had a wonderful life. I did everything right. Why did I go through this?" And then Narada tells him a story that 50 lifetimes ago, also you were a king, but you were unjust. And you took undue revenge on 100, something I forget whether it was, you did that. But, so he says, "Why now? Why didn't I suffer it immediately?" He said, "But to get 100 sons, you need a lot of piety. To get children is considered good karma. You need a lot of piety. So you have to build it a lot. Then the good karma came, but something which was waiting long back came now." So that's how it'll play out over.
So the Gautam is always a good enhancement. It's not like
Both.
digressing.
So this whole cycle, that's what, if knowledge, bija is good, then the whole thing is a good. It's avidya, vidya, avidya. If it's ignorance, bija is bad, then everything is bad. That's not good. Further,
And then from life experiences, you can enhance it to the good. I guess how do
Oh,
we
how do you
only
turn-
have good things?
How do you turn, if it starts with ignorance where you're going to a negative, how do you turn it to a positive?
I guess learning from it.
yes. So we are dealing with, but maybe this chart would be, each bija has its own chart. So imagine in my life, all these simultaneously I have good, right? We all have good and bad in us, right? We all have, so yeah, both are happening. And so I have to, Ramana Swami gives the example of the good dog and the bad dog. That we have 2 dogs in us always. One is and both are barking. And both are asking for food and asking. And so there's a good dog telling me, "Don't take the $100 bill." Oh, sorry, the bad dog. And the good dog says, the bad dog says, "Take the $100 bill." The good dog says, "Don't take it." and now I come to the $100 bill, and both are screaming, 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 and now I have to choose. So, 1 second. This is only applying to the body. We as free will is always there. We are always choosing. This, so karma is not it's not in us, it's what is happening. This is how I got this body, but what I do with this body is still always my free will. And therefore the cross question of destiny and free will. Am I destined or am I free? Both are true. I'm not destined to anything. I just have a field of activity. Like right now, I'm here in this room. Yes, this is my field. Now I can choose what to do. I can either be very kind and respectful and speak to you nicely, or just fight with everyone here, or then that's what. But right now, my field is this much. Or another example is, if you all I go to Washington Square Park, and I see dogs on leashes, but all are different. Some dogs have this long leash. Some dogs are right here. Why? Because this dog, whoever comes, he's just going to, so the master is like, and the other dog who's like tiny, can't harm anybody, he's just on this long leash, and nobody cares, and the other dog is very peaceful. Very similarly, when we exercise our free will very positively, our field grows. Then our freedom, then our ability to, all that grows a lot. But when we don't, when it's restricted, that's how divine nature works, and it gets restricted. Sometimes we may not see it immediately. For example, what I mean to say is we sometimes see bad people doing great in their life, and good people are miserable there because it's not an immediate thing. Sometimes it's immediate, sometimes it's not. So again, it's personal, it's customized. You can't put a time to it. Oh, you did this, day after tomorrow, sorry. It's not like I ate a rotten apple and I won't be like that. Maybe.
What if, yeah, but it's just like you chose to learn that lesson. So you chose a hard life so you could learn that lesson. So you could be born as a person who suffers, even though in that life you're a good person. The life before you're like, I didn't really learn this. So I want to be a good person who suffers so I can learn this.
Yes, we can choose the response to the situations. But we don't really choose the karma. We don't choose our field of activity. So the field of activity is kind of the result of what has happened, and therefore you have this field now. Right? Like, because if I studied hard, I did my graduation, did a post-graduation, I did all that, then naturally on my resume, I have a lot. And that has opened up a big field for me. But if throughout my schooling, I wasted my time, I did this, I did that. What's going to be on what I can't get a big field. So that's not a choice. But what I can do to then be given that choice, that's what karma is. Is that answering my question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Bhagavad Gita tells us basically we have a choice for our actions, but no control of the results.
Yes, we can
So
choose.
we can choose our actions,
Yes.
whether right or wrong, whatever your mind thinks or whatever it is and all. But the results of that whole thing, karma basically, is not controlled by us.
True, because karma
That is
is
what the main teaching of karma.
so
So with the analogy of school and everything, right? The first thing is the harmony, learn, and serve, which with studying in school, you learn, and then you get a good job, hopefully, all goes well, right? Which you can see in this lifetime. So we all know why learning is important. So karma, conceptually, it makes, you can, okay, yes, if I do good, maybe not this lifetime, next lifetime. But that's hard because we can't see it. Because we don't remember our past life. We don't know our next, which is fine, but past we don't remember. With the blind king, I forget his name. He had someone tell him, oh wait, but in the past you did this. We don't have anyone telling us. So how do we, and I know that's all the meditation to figure out, you know, how kind of your soul does know at the end of the day, but how do we make sense of all this? How do you just follow it?
Let me come to what is the learning from the awareness of this
Awareness.
karma, right? Now we know. And the only objective was not to just know. Even that itself, I'm sure even right now, just the awareness changes so many things. Changes our understanding about it. At least when I learned it, it was so telling about, okay, this is why this happens in my life. Made me feel so that's come to what we could, why are we discussing this at all, or what do we learn, or how do we learn karma? Just before, in answer to your question of, do we exactly know? Well, in deep astrology, you can know what you're going through, why. There is a past life is happening. Even in modern hypnosis, there's a process called past life regression, which it takes you back to some previous life, not exactly the previous one, but some life, you go through something. And you know there are people who have past life memories. So many people, there are books written about, they fully remember a 5-year-old kid and he's having a dream one day. This is all on Nat Geo and Discovery series. And every night he's in the bed, he's having a nightmare. He kicks and says, little man can't get out, fire, little man can't get out. So the parents went on and on the dream. Every night they were wondering what's going on. They went to psychologists and doctors and nobody could answer. And as he grew a little more, when he could speak a little more, one day they went to a World War museum. And he went to this huge World War plane. And he started like a mechanic. He was checking, he was doing this, saying that. And they're like, I don't know this. And he was using such complicated terms. Oh, that's the rudder. And the father is joking, oh, missile. It's not a missile, that's a drop bomb. The father got really curious. There's something to this. And after that visit, his experience started changing. He started saying, my name is James. They say, yes, your name is James. Because in this life, what he started referring to was his past. He says, no, my name was James. He started getting confused and he said, I was a pilot. First they ignored him because he's 6-year-old. Then one day his dad starts doing a research and he goes through military roster and he finds one James. He finds many James. He finds a James in the quadrant which he described, flying over this, doing that, and the method of death. And now, so while he's speaking the story, his dad carries out a deep research. And now he's visiting psychologists, doing all that. And his dad ultimately reaches to a point where he finds out there was a James who died in a plane attacked by a missile and the cockpit was closed. There was fire, so he couldn't get out. And they trace his parents from his past life who are still alive. They trace his home, and he goes back. And for a kid to have those emotions, to come back to his place and everything, this one case. I've studied at least maybe 25 such cases in detail. There's a case, same thing like a girl who was 22 when she dies, but she has a daughter. She's immediately born in the next village. And again, the same thing, they find out the parents, they do this, everything, and it comes back. She comes back, now she's 12. Oh no, sorry, she's like 6 or 7, and the daughter now is 12, but she relates to her like a mother. She knows her name, she knows what she likes, the love.
Is that where we're supposed to be?
No.
Are we supposed to be that aware?
No. Not really. But I was just giving you an example of, you really wish to, if you really want to know. Sometimes, this happened in my family, when my brother's daughter was going through some fever. Very often that fever was happening to her. And they went to some astrologer, and the astrologer said, well, it's because some of your ancestors did something really bad in a particular place. And that's kind of seeping through the family. So they had to do some kind of ritual, some kind of thing, and then it is over. Then the thing stopped. So coming back to karma, since I brought up one more point, karma is not just me, but it's affecting a larger community also. When I act, I also bring result to myself and the immediate people I belong to, like family, and the broader community I live in. When community, for example, there's a story in the Mahabharata where this man, 6 children die, when they're very young. So the man goes to the king and he says, and the king says yes. Because the concept was that the king was doing something wrong, and so that was affecting the whole community. Because we're all connected, we're all intertwined in that way. It's getting scary.
Yes.
Yes.
Because, yeah, it's the same with the king's 100 sons that died. Because of something he did, they died. But then maybe their karma also had something.
Yes.
Which-
it definitely did. But the point is, let's come to our next one. But there is a first recognition is the connectedness, that everything is deeply connected. We are connected to each other, and our actions are connected to what comes, as so many of you said, and your thought about karma comes to us. That kind of connection, and that connection brings about both humility in life, going through life with this understanding that I'm not the controller, the boss. There's something more. There's something I need to respond to, something I need to respect, something I need to go through life with, that kind of feeling. And it comes in the point of dependence, that we depend. We're together, we're harmonious. I have to put the effort to also deserve. My mom used to say, deserve. First deserve, then desire. First you deserve it. Then you desire it. Have you done enough to deserve it? The other thing is the sense of responsibility. Now, this is a little sensitive. This word is sensitive because it wouldn't be fair. Suppose you got something bad happened to you, and I said, "Oh, it's your karma." Would that be right? Would that be, Aditi, something bad happened to you, and you went to me and crying and you said, "I said, it's your karma. Deal with it." Wow, that would be. And sometimes in some spiritual traditions, I've seen this happen in front of my eyes. It was heartbreaking. Someone went to see my mentor. So this is what is happening. So it's your karma. Deal with it. Would that be the right thing to say? Yes.
So only God knows people's situations, how they got there.
Yes. That karma cannot be, none of us can understand what's happening, why it's happening to someone. And that's the most inhuman, insensitive way of dealing with it. That if you tell someone, that's one golden rule of, if you go to any astrologer or anything, they will never tell you, when you're going to die. Just come. They do it. You may even see it. Or they won't tell you some brutal, because it's not there. Even in astrology, they cannot say this will happen at this time. They say this may happen. There perhaps is a period in your life where you may experience some difficulty. Maybe this will happen, maybe. Because this is a very dynamic cycle. It's constantly happening. If you go into the details of Prarabdha, they give a time, like Prarabdha can last from 1 muhurta, which is 1/12 of a second, to 80 years. Or some they give this kind of understanding of, like, one example of 1/12 of a second is where someone just has a nightmare. It's a result of something. We don't have to go through it in reality. Just went through those feelings and it's done. So to understand that sense of responsibility, not in terms of something that happened to someone, so I say you're responsible with it, but for myself to know that I create, I choose, and I can change. If I have that power, I can create future. can choose what I want to do, how I want to respond, and I can change to whatever I want. Learning and growth, of course, as we discussed so much, to take us more towards service, to take us more towards love and compassion. And of course, is presence, to understand acceptance, forgiveness. But there's one more thing. This whole thing is very interesting. How in the Vedic process there are different ways you can undo this whole cycle. You don't have to go through the whole cycle, especially the back part. And that's called that's an elaborate study in the Vedas. There are different types. There are rituals you can do. There is even something called inner repentance and public repentance. There is yajnas, you can do sacrifices. There is yatra, or you go to a holy place and take a dip in those waters or experience that. There is vratas, or you take up a vow that for 40 days I won't eat after sunset or do this. Or and then there is japa, you do some kind of mantras, you keep reciting them all. And all these completely undo the cycle. Now I'm going to tell you something interesting. So if you want to deal with prarabdha, all these things help you deal with prarabdha. What all I just described. There's so much which can help. And it kind of may act on sanchit a little bit, your bank account. If you're an even more advanced person, that's called Ashtanga Yoga. Where you go. Yoga is a very famous thing. I'm sure all of us have attended a yoga class or some active yogis. It's everywhere. But that's one aspect of yoga. But when you're very advanced in your yoga, then you conquer these. Then you can cut the cycle off completely here. That's why they go into the Himalayas and they live. There's one Tatwala Baba I visited an ashram. He was 120 years old. I've not seen him live, but I've seen his ashram. I've seen and spoken to people. He looked like he was 30, not a day older than 30. He was so strong, this man. For his firewood, he would uproot trees. There's no YouTube evidence of this, but these are genuine spiritual people who won't lie to you, telling you his power. And that level, you just finish off everything. Then you're just living your own. There's no karmic bondage. But interestingly, these two are very difficult. There's one thing which happens these two also. That is called the process of bhakti. Why? Because the process of bhakti is a direct connection to the Supreme Divine. You're building for example, I can either go, I want to work in the Bhakti Center. And I start my application. I do something there. Or I just call the CEO over to my home. He becomes my friend. We are hanging out. And he's like, oh, you're a good guy. What do you do? I'm just looking for a job. Okay, you just come and it's like an instant shortcut. And he has the power to change the rule, do this, do that. That's what connects you straight to the Supreme Divine. And that is why, remember, he was talking about when he started the Kirtan, he recited these 7 effects of the Kirtan. And he was saying it is pleasing to the soul. It's all of these things. Everything is immediately, at once, completely mitigated, completely calm down. You will experience it. I can say from my own life, 100% by the practice of bhakti, you can feel and know things have changed completely. But you had to go through this totally different. And I've spoken to so many people who will testify to it's something else which is now governing my life. In fact, the Gita Krishna talks about this so much. For a serious spiritualist, he says, I personally now you're under my care. Now I deal with you directly. Right? Like my friend who he works and he's at quite a junior position, but he really is the friend of the CEO of this big firm. And for him, any problem, he just reports there, anything else. So it's like this divine hand. And therefore, the practices of bhakti, which are so simple, right? They're called A, B, C, D, E. A is association, like this. They come together, it is discussing their understanding. B is called books or understanding spiritual wisdom. Like they call, and many of you here are because of a book, perhaps at Washington Square Park. Or and C is chanting or japa or kirtan, which is an immensely powerful spiritual practice. D is for diet or living a life in sattva, world. And E is for engagement, for engaging in service, doing something in connection to bhakti, doing something in connection to God. Then this whole cycle and all that we spoke is completely changed. I'll tell you one small story. One of my friends, he went to an astrologer, very famous in India. They tell you you give a thumbprint, and they tell you your entire life. And he went when he was 23, he was 40. And he went with 3-4 of his friends, and they all did. And when the astrologer read his friends' thing, they were exact. That you will be born in such and such place, true. Your parents have this kind of years, this kind of wealth, etc. Whole prediction. And he went, and they predicted the whole thing. And suddenly the astrologer said, but wait a minute. In your life, there is a path called, it's not called a bhakti yoga. It's got some kind of yoga, it is called in your chart, where you turn suddenly very spiritual. He said, if this happens, and you take to bhakti, whatever I've read, nothing will come to you. I don't know what will happen. Then you belong to a different realm. Then it's just that's exactly what happened. And this was much before. At 23, when he was 25, he came to the temple in Mumbai. He started doing his job. I did this, that, and everything changed in his life. None of those things which they had read, and even other people who had told him something. Prabhupada used to say, when we do kirtan and we clap and kirtan, our lines will change. In palmistry, the science of reading your lines, when you clap, because ultimately, as we're discussing, the whole purpose is learning. The whole purpose is understanding, uplifting our consciousness. And when we do a very deeply spiritual activity, that's the most potent thing to learn, to understand. Because again, as I said, it's not just learning is not just an intellectual function. I think I overcalculated. I had maybe a 45 minute more discussion left to understand why these, how even our ability to perceive sometimes gets limited. Even our ability to intuitiveness, understanding, all that kind of sometimes gets blocked. But my spiritual process breaks through all those barriers. And some things we don't have access to, immediately become accessible. Some things which, so that's any questions or yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I was stuck out for kuta. Kuta, if I remember, that's like an inclination or
Yes,
tendency.
that's an inclination. Again, to continue to do the same.
And do all of the items have like the analogy, like you have the seed, and I know Pravda's like kind of sprout, it's like sprouting, does kuta have
What we could say for maybe the seeds which fall off the tree, which because when the tree grows as prarabdha, and the same tree gives more seeds of the same tree. So maybe you could say kuta
is prarabdha, is it the fruit? Is it like
yes, prarabdha is the fruit I can now, like I sow a seed, but I wanted a mango. Then it takes time for the mango to grow, then the plant will grow, it takes many years. Finally, one day I get that fruit. That's
kuta, like the fallen seeds?
Yes, seeds which again there's a tendency now.
Yeah.
Now instead of one mango tree, there are going to be 20 mango trees.
Yeah.
So my heart instead of this much intensity, maybe now it's even more intensity. Okay. Any? Yes.
I'm kind of curious, like when you go from one life to the other, like you throw off like garnet represents the body, right? But is it you also can you change personalities too? Is it like that movie Soul where you kind of like help determine what personality you have?
Thank you. That's a nice question. The body changes, but the mind remains the same. That's why we carry. That's how memories. All this exists in the mind. Mind, that's a subtle body. Mind, intelligence, ego is called. That covering is the same for every life. And so, yes, there can be some change and some this thing. Well, even in one life, we can affect a personality change. If you are, especially with spiritual processes, it deeply changes because spirituality is affecting this whole cycle. So, although it's my prarabdha karma to have some kind of personality, deeply spiritual, it will change, it will shift.
So are you saying like, in someone's life, if they have a traumatic experience,
Yes.
maybe lead them down a very negative path? Because they experience some trauma,
Yes.
they don't trust people,
Yes.
whatever. So you're saying with bhakti, it's the opposite effect where
Absolutely.
it's like the opposite of trauma is that if you can follow, or at least be inclined to let that in, you're now going a positive, like, deviation.
Sort of revelation.
Yes, definitely. This is a very recent thing in America. There was one lady who, bhakti practitioner, diagnosed with cancer. This happened I think in the 90s. She was supposed to die in 1 year, but she lived for 10 years with cancer. An extremely excruciating form of cancer. And the doctors would come in after a year, 2 years, 3 years, she's still living. And soon she started having visitors. And soon the visitors started saying, we went to Sode's her and we've come out and like. She came on American television and the doctors also were surprised. Aren't you in pain? She would say, yes, I'm in extreme pain, but I'm happy. And for 10 years, I'm forgetting the name. I think it was Kundi Devi or something. So yes, bhakti will completely change.
Well, that's true.
No, I'm not sure. No. She's no more.
Yeah, or someone who's still here.
Yeah. No, I mean, she's no more. The example I gave,
Krishna Devi is no more.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. No, I'm not sure. Yes.
Sorry, just to follow up, is bhakti then connected to one form of God, or is it, like, and maybe this is touching on a way deeper subject, so we're talking about the existence of God, or a supreme divine, like, who is the bhakti to? Like, if you're a bhakta of someone, whose bhakti would one be?
Yes, bhakti would be to a personal God. God is one, right? By definition, God can be one, but God can manifest in various ways depending on how I want to meet God. For example, Pulkit is one kind of person in this room. He's another kind of person at home and another kind of person at work. It's the same person. But at work, they want to see you as a colleague, an employee. At home, as a brother, with me as a friend. So the same person manifesting differently, and according to what I want to approach you with, that way I'll build my relation. So there's the soul, there's God, and bhakti is that process that will differ according to what I want to experience and how I want to express that. But yes, it would be a personal God. It wouldn't be to the universe. That would be one. But how can I do bhakti to the impersonal? Right? How can I be devoted to light? Although that's a manifestation of God, right? So that could be a personal God. But that's a deep. That's any other was it satisfying? Is it? Okay, so we are. Thank you. We are done. I hope it was meaningful and not too confusing and understandable awareness of the all.
Thank you so much.
started with Kirtan, Gauranga talked about how important this is, one of these 5 processes, how important this is, so we're gonna end with this as well. Can you play the redundant? And then we will wrap up after that.